Okay, well, today we are talking about fucking Christian fiction. Help me. Today we're here to discuss what is surely the worst thing. Hi, my name's Rachel, by the way. Today we're here to discuss what is surely the worst thing I have ever read, and by golly, I mean it this time. Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers was published in 1991. It is the Christian romance novel. It's a book that was marketed at Christian women and girls, minors. Cannot leave that part out, it's very important. That explores the theme of love and redemption and faith and marital R-word within the context of historical romance set in the American West gold rush period of the 1850s. And actually, I used to live in the area that this book is set in, which was interesting. While the book has gained a substantial readership for its alleged portrayal of redemption through love, the harmful evangelical rhetoric present in this has gone largely not talked about or addressed by Christians. And I tend to say, not all Christians. I tend to give y'all a pass. But my God, I am begging Christians who are cool and not fundies to speak up about this book for the love of your God, because it is horrendous and this is a major issue. I mean, like we talk about in the ex-fundy community, including those who are still in the faith, they'll talk about books like I Kiss Dating Goodbye. I need y'all to start talking about Redeeming Love. I need y'all to start doing your part. It cannot just be me. Let's go over this book today, and it's terrible depictions of workers of the smexual type. I have to be so careful in the beginning of videos, otherwise YouTube will monetize me. So Redeeming Love is one of the most popular fiction books in Fundyland. I posted about reading this book and immediately got comments from ex-fundies who were like, every girl in my youth group read this. Oh my God, what a throwback. What a disgusting throwback. We did a Bible study on it. Every girl thought this was the pinnacle of romance. And growing up, I definitely cracked this book open at some point. I probably didn't read past the first chapter, but everyone around me either has a copy of this or has read it or has read parts of it or discussed it in a Bible study, because it's based on a Bible story, one about Hosea, who is a prophet. Oh my gosh, every time I fucking say the word Hosea, my brain immediately starts singing we were taught to memorize the books of the Bible in fundy Christian schools. So I don't remember what section of the Bible this is, but it's Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, something, Micah. Oh, that's all I remember. Oh, maybe I am losing it. Great. Good. Maybe eventually it'll all be gone. The novel is set in the California Gold Rush. It tells the story of Sarah, who is forced into sex trafficking, which the book refers to as prostitution, which the book refers to as schmrostitution, at the age of 8, and ends up living a life full of pain and despair until she meets Michael Hosea. Yeah. The point of Redeeming Love is to closely mirror the biblical story of Hosea, which he was a prophet from the Old Testament, and in the book of Hosea, God commands this prophet Hosea to marry a schmex worker named Gomer. Gomer repeatedly leaves Hosea and returns to her life of schmex working, yet Hosea continues to love her and take her back, which is supposed to be mirroring God's unwavering love for his capital H people who often turn away from him, capital H. Christians are referred to as the bride of Christ, and we are seen as disgusting and dirty because we are inherently of the flesh or sinful. And Hosea is supposed to be like God, where God is so loving and always takes us disgusting, filthy schmores back. It's pretty harmful, and this was given to girls. For so many reasons, it is disturbing to me that this was given to young girls as a blueprint for what marriage should look like. I am not kidding you. That is exactly what happened in Fundyland. Redeeming Love is entirely rooted in evangelical Christianity, and as such, it's going to espouse pretty fucking disturbing things because that is the author's intention, even though she does not see it as fucking disturbing. It is. I think I should be good to not say schmexburger anymore now. It's been a couple minutes, right? We should be good now. But it's not just going to like say these things, it's going to recommend or prescribe them for the audience. That is the intention of the author. So our protagonist, formerly known as Sarah, who is given the name Angel when she is 8 years old by the person who kidnaps her, essentially, which it's a little more complicated than that. He's given her, and then he kills the guy who gave him to her, and oh my gosh, there's so many trigger warnings I'm gonna have to list, and then gives her a new name. Actually, let me do trigger warnings now. Trigger warning for child sexual assault, child sex trafficking in general, use of slurs, racism against Indigenous Native Americans, rape and including marital rape, religious trauma, religion used as a weapon, violence, obviously sex trafficking, but I cannot stress enough, sex trafficking of a child, child abuse, it's just horrendous. Like, yeah, by the way, incest. Yeah, suicide. Am I leaving anything out? I don't think so. Probably. It's just those, and then those are the worst ones. Yeah? Okay, so Angel is depicted as a sex worker, even though the book calls her a prostitute, even though she was forced into it at 8 years old and has no ability to leave it. That is a sex trafficking victim, a child sex trafficking victim. And Angel is depicted as in need of salvation for those things which are considered sins, which they consider it sin whether you choose to be a sex worker or you are trafficked into it, and that is alarming because that means they think that sex is the same as rape, and that both of them are sins. Like, that's really hard to wrap my head around, even though I used to share the same faith as Francine Rivers. This narrative perpetuates the idea that women, particularly those in the sex work industry, need to be saved or redeemed, especially by a man, by a nice guy, or what Christians would call a good man, who is of the faith, a believer. I say Christians, I mean fundies. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to say all Christians. I do have a video on is sex work valid work, which the answer is yes. I have a video on that down below if you want to watch it. But this book's ideas on sex work are alarming, antiquated is putting it mildly. This patriarchal view of women's agency and autonomy, which is deeply disturbing and problematic. This story glorifies the notion that a woman's worth is tied to her purity and that she has to be rescued from her own choices, even when they are not her own choices, and that women don't really need choices. They just need a good Christian man who will make choices for them. I'm not over exaggerating. This is it. That's the book. Throughout the story, Angel's profession is not the right word because she didn't choose it. Angel's, I'll put it nicely, circumstances are portrayed as something inherently sinful and degrading, implying that she's in need of salvation. But again, she did not choose this. The stigmatization, though, of sex work, because it's okay if you do choose it, the stigmatization of sex work and of being a victim of childhood sexual trafficking is harmful and inaccurate. Sex is not sin. Sex work is work. Sex work and childhood sexual trafficking are not the same thing. But again, I cannot stress enough, sex work is work. It's a job. I'm gonna get into all this. This is just me prefacing what happens in the book to try to warn you about what we're gonna get into. The reality is that sex work is a complex issue, and there are issues within the sex work industry. Sure, they need to be addressed. Sure. But the people that we should be listening to about it are the sex workers themselves. Nothing about us without us, they say. Please read this book. Labeling sex work as inherently immoral and in need of redemption reinforces harmful stereotypes that only seek to, again, harm those involved, the sex workers. If you actually care about them, listen to them when they speak, because when we don't, it creates more social stigma, pushes sex workers further to the margins of society. In doing so, it disregards the agency and the autonomy of those who do sex work as a job, and it fails to address the systemic issues that contribute to the industry, the systemic issues that y'all supposedly care about, I thought. But of course, this book is all about disregarding the agency of women. It also perpetuates gender roles, traditional gender roles, where women are passive, dependent, and in need of male protection. You can want protection from your partner who's a man. It is not a need. It's just not. All this does is reinforce this idea that women are incapable and unworthy of making their own decisions. And this character of Michael Hosea, who is supposed to be this like pinnacle of what the Christian girl should look for as a husband, but also is supposed to reflect God. He's the savior figure, is the biggest archetype that I can think of this person who is like, you don't need to make any decisions. You are stupid. You are sinful. I know best. And because I love you, I'm telling you this. What's disturbing is that this is the kind of man my mom would have wanted me to end up with. And further, it's the kind of men that the Duggar family is raising. While his intentions, Michael Hosea, may be rooted in love and care because he's a Christian and God is love, the narrative constructs this completely unhealthy power dynamic where women are seen as incomplete without the guiding influence, the decision making of a man. Not just incomplete, but unworthy. The book fails to explore the possibility of women finding redemption and strength within themselves or from a supportive women-led community, or even one friendship with a woman addressing the systemic issues that lead to women being in positions where they have no autonomy. It was like, what? 1850s California is kind of shit towards women? You know whose fault this is? The women. What? This narrow representation of women's roles in life contributes to the perpetuation of gender inequality again, and have we not suffered enough of that? And it just seeks to like promote the idea of limiting the potential for women to embrace their agency and their independence. The depiction of sex work is bad. It is. But the conversations around sex itself are horrifying. I said, I think on Goodreads, I would rather spend the night in a haunted Chuck E. Cheese than ever read the scene where these two have sex for the first time ever again. That's how disturbing I found it. And I have read extreme horror that I found less disturbing because this book leans heavily on the concept of purity. Purity culture is exemplified in this book. It is deeply ingrained in evangelical beliefs. Purity culture places the responsibility for sexual purity primarily on women and girls, little girls, perpetuating this damaging idea that their worth is intrinsically tied to their virginity. This concept reinforces the idea that women's bodies are a source of temptation for men, and that little girls' bodies are a source of temptation for men, and that we bear the burden of preserving men's morality. This rhetoric contributes to victim blaming, shame, and keeping us quiet about any abuse that we suffer. This has severe consequences in the church. Even when you finally do get married and you know it's fine for you to have sex, a lot of sects of Fundyland believe that you need to not defraud your husband by agreeing to marry him and then not giving him sex. Some of them go so far as to condone marital rape. And I would say that this book does nothing to deal with the fact that Michael Hosea does in fact essentially, if you were to ask me, is this rape? I would say yes. The scene where they have sex for the first time I would say it's rape. He does not say sorry for this. It is practically condoned. So I don't really know what else to say. Like, this is the most infuriating book I've ever read in my life. That was a brief summation, of my core issues with it. If you want to leave it there and click off, that's fine. That's cool. But if you want to stay and listen to me yell about the terrible nitty-gritty details, you're welcome to stay because I have literally pages upon pages of notes. Actually, before I even continue, and I don't know if I need to go eat some lunch and I'm running out of time to film, so I might have to film the rest of this later today. And the thing I want to point out here is that, remember that video I did about book banning? Which one you're asking? The one I just recently did about the lady in my county, Julie Gebhards, who gets really upset about certain books, but the first book she ever got upsetty spaghetti about was The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I will have you know that the reason she got upset about The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison and said it was inappropriate for schools despite it being a award-winning book by a Nobel Prize winning author, and having further than that, like let's ignore that that's a thing. Let's pretend that doesn't mean anything. Okay, let's look at the fact that that book has been in schools for decades and there is no causal relationship between between that book and harm to kids. None. That's never been demonstrated. I just want to point that out once again. But I want to point out that I looked up Julie. Her kids are on Instagram, and I wish that she, first of all, would tell her daughter to take her high school out of her Instagram bio. That's dangerous. Please, if you are a minor, do not list where you go to school on your social media. I know you want to like meet other people that are, but like people are so predatory on the internet, and if you are a minor, please be careful about being on the internet. Don't put your personal information. I'm an adult and I don't put my personal information on the internet. Please don't do that. So I am literally begging Julie to do what she says that she cares about and protect students, including her fucking own kids. Further than that, I want to point out to Julie that Redeeming Love is in her daughter's high school. The county only has 4 copies in high schools, and her daughter's school is one of them. And Julie just challenged This Book is Gay again at the high school level. She wants to have that fight again. And she challenged another Ellen Hopkins book. So I want to know, if you are challenging books like The Bluest Eye for inappropriate content, incest, child sexual assault, rape, right? You think that these things should not be in schools. I want to know why you have not challenged it, because Julie's running around all the schools in the county. She's not going to her kids' school. She's going to other parents. She's going in lieu of other parents to schools. Oh fuck. And complaining about books at schools where she doesn't have any kids in attendance. So why this one does not get challenged by Julie? This is all she does. All she does is run around challenging books. So I want to know, why not this one? If The Bluest Eye was not appropriate for sexual assault, child sexual assault, rape, incest, if The Bluest Eye cannot be read by high school students according to Julie Gebhard's, then I want to know why it's appropriate when Francine Rivers does it. I want to know why the double standard. I want to know, particularly because, again, the problem was her daughter said, "Can you get this book for me?" And she was horrified, allegedly, by The Bluest Eye. She doesn't want books that horrify her available to anybody's kids, including her own. So if The Bluest Eye is horrifying for these reasons, why is it that Francine Rivers' book is not horrifying for the exact same reasons? There is rape of a child in this book. There is marital rape. There is incest. There is sexual assault. There is foul language. All of these things that she keeps showing up at the school board to fucking complain about. But this book, it's fine, and this book, it's not. Should we deliberate on why we think that is? I will now be going to make my lunch, and I will come back to film more.
Hello, 'tis I. This is the only way that I can film this. I have tried to film this video, the nitty-gritty, talking about this book in my filming sphere, and I can't do it. I need to be chill at my desk. I cannot put on the Reads with Rachel. I just need to be chill today. So today we're going to talk about that book. And no, I'm not happy about it. I wrote all of my notes about this in my planner. Why? I don't know. This book was extremely triggering for me. And the movie was even worse. There was a scene where I had to stop watching. So, yep, it was definitely about a forced abortion. So that was awful. This book starts out and we get told about Sarah, an 8-year-old girl whose mother and her live in a little cottage. Her father comes to visit. Now, he has never talked to his daughter, Sarah. He just comes to visit to see his mistress, her mom. And her mom is like, "I want you to meet your dad." So she has him meet her, and this guy is like, "You need to leave, you need to run along and play." And then he's really mean to Sarah's mom because he basically just wants Sarah's mom and not the child. And he's like, "You should have had an abortion like I told you to." It's all, it's setting us up to be told that men are shit unless they are Christian men. Help me. So it's trash. This book is the worst thing I've ever read, and it is because this is poorly written. I'm not kidding. It's poorly written. We head hop nonstop. And I don't know if maybe back in the 90s when this was written, if we just didn't have rules about head hopping. I don't know. I'm a crappy book reviewer and I don't have a literary degree. But I do know that head hopping, when you are in a scene and you are hearing from the internal perspective, the internal feelings of one person, and then suddenly the next sentence you are hearing the internal feelings of another person, it is very jarring because I'm like, oh, and now I'm in this head, and now I'm in this head. It throws me off very badly. It just feels like, to be honest, lazy on the part of the author because she can't stay in one head. She has to head hop, which is Poor writing. We are told that then Sarah, the little girl, her mom is devastated because her dad slaps her mom, doesn't want anything to do with her. Sarah gets sent to some seaside town with her. Her mom has a maid who is a black woman. Her and this maid go off for a little while to the seaside town, and Sarah is mistreated by everybody. The maid leaves her out in the cold while she's having sex. It's just like everybody is shit because nobody's a Christian is what the book is trying to hammer home for you. It's garbage. What ends up happening is that Sarah's mom becomes destitute because her dad is not supporting them anymore because he was mad at his mistress for wanting him to have a relationship with their daughter. And he said no because she was illegitimate and he had a family. Sarah's mom ends up destitute, then she ends up sick, and then she dies. And it's hammered home that Sarah's mom was Catholic, not Protestant. Specifically, not the kind of Protestant where you have a relationship with Jesus Christ. In Fundyland, we are told that that is what sets us apart from every other kind of person who calls themselves a Christian, is that we are believers with a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, and therefore we are different and special, and we are actually going to heaven while people like Catholics are going to hell. Fun. So, assumedly, according to Francine Rivers, Sarah's mom went to hell for not believing hard enough, and she died broken and heartbroken, I should say, having been doing sex work, which this book has nothing but bad things to say about. So then Sarah gets sold by, I don't know if this man was her mom's boyfriend exactly. She gets taken by him to a brothel where he's going to sell her, but then the guy, Duke, who he's taking Sarah to give her to, has him killed. So she witnesses a murder right in front of her, and then Duke, who is a pedophile, takes her under his wing, sexually abuses her off page, and then she is raised to become a, the book calls her a prostitute, but in reality she is a child sex trafficking victim. So then she is working at a brothel in California, actually quite close to where I used to live in California, at a place called Paradise, not paradise, but like a pair of dice, but it's a paradise, okay? She's working at this brothel. There's a bunch of other girls that work at the brothel. She's at this point, I want to say 22, maybe, I don't remember. Is treated like shit, and there's a woman called the Duchess, no relation to Duke, who treats her like shit, who runs the brothel, and there is a guy who works for the Duchess who strong arms all the women, but especially our girl, whose name is no longer Sarah. She now goes by Angel because that is what Duke, the pedophile, named her. And she is come upon by a man named Michael Hosea, and Michael Hosea thinks there was a grave, tragic dignity about her, and he decides that he wants to get to know her, but finds out that she is a prostitute, sex trafficking victim, which I am no longer going to call prostitute on my own unless I'm referring to what the text says. I'm going to call her a sex trafficking victim because that's what she is. And the thing about Angel is that she is the most wanted sex worker, and so her the lady in charge of her, the Duchess, every day raffles her off to basically highest bidders, and everybody puts their name in a hat and she pulls the hat. Anyway, Angel is like the primary reason that the men come to the brothel at Paradise. And Duchess, there's a lot of fat phobia towards Duchess. Angel calls her a pig and a cow. It says Duchess eats too much and has rolls of flesh, puffy cheeks, and developing a second chin because Duchess is eating all the food that she's not giving to the sex workers at the brothel. So then Michael Hosea shows up and tries to get her attention, trying to get her to come away with him and marry him. And she's like, I get proposed to all the fucking time, so pass. And she's like, I'm none of your business. And he says, it became my business the moment I saw you. So we just, right off the jump, head into paternalism, which is the least sexy thing that I can think of. And then he gets annoyed with her for saying no and prays to God, who told him to pursue this woman in the first place. Send me someone with dirt under her fingernails instead of in her blood, referring to the fact that she is a sex worker, calling her dirty blood. So that's fun. There's also the M slur used against people with dwarfism in this book in a pretty terrible way, and come to find out they left that line in the movie, which was disturbing. There's actually, now that I'm here, there's actually a really good content creator who talks about dwarfism throughout history and presently, but he has all these posts about, people throughout history with dwarfism that otherwise we never would have known about, because, our history books leave them out, like they leave out a lot of people. So I will leave his profile link below. She repeatedly says no to Michael Hosea's insistence that she marry him, and I just think that the paternalism here is like really despicable. But the thing about this book is that it portrays it as something that girls and women should aspire to, which is really creepy. So eventually she demands her money from Duchess, and Duchess is like, well, I take care of you, I put you in silks, so no, you actually owe me money. And then she ends up beaten to a pulp by Duchess's bodyguard guy, who already just fucking hates her. So Michael Hosea finally shows back up because he had left and not talked to her for months or weeks or something. I don't know. It wasn't long enough, in my opinion, after she had told him, like, no thank you, a million fucking times, and he was still insistent that she just leave and marry him and come live on his farm. He didn't even ask if that's something she'd be interested in. So he shows back up because he just feels in his spirit that something is wrong. So he goes back to the brothel and finds Angel beaten to a pulp. And he turns to Duchess and he's like, who did this? She's like, it was the bodyguard. And he says to her, get out of here before I do something I regret. And I'm like, so you're just gonna beat a woman up? You're just gonna beat up a woman because you're mad that she had another woman beaten up? Like, what is that? Like, what does this violence here achieve? I don't know. It was just really weird. So he decides to marry her right then while she's half conscious. He puts a ring on her half conscious finger, has a priest show up, and this is off page, by the way, and she says, like, sure, I guess, when the priest says, do you take this man? So definitely the consent to the marriage is iffy and at best. And he considers her to be dirty. This is like explicitly stated. He considers her dirty because of the life that she has lived. First of all, it wasn't even her choice to have this sort of life, but even if it was, sex work is not dirty. So this is just gross. This is just whorephobia, basically. And apparently she is too skinny, and she says, not enough meat on my bones to please you. And I'm like, weren't you just making fun of Duchess for being fat like 30 pages ago? Okay. Then he starts doing this thing that is going to last throughout the entire book, where he starts to call her different names that she never asked him to call her. And never once does he ask her, what name would you like to go by? Do you want a new name? Never even thinks, maybe I should ask her about that. Never even comes to mind, because the idea of giving this woman any sort of choice, agency, autonomy never occurs to Michael Hosea, because Michael Hosea fucking sucks. You know what he does tell her, though? Instead of, hey, if you want to pick a new name, you can. No, he doesn't say that. You know what he does say? I love you. Sir, you don't even know her. Sir, this is a stranger. Are you good? She's like, oh, so you're gonna want to fuck then? And he's like, well, I don't want anything for now. And I'm like, how about for never, you disgusting piece of shit. He talks about where he came from. He came from, they're living in California. He came from the other coast. He says he came here with his sister and her husband, his brother-in-law, Paul. And his sister, he has all of her clothes because his sister is dead. Tess, I believe her name was. And so he gives Angel all of Tess's clothes. And so he says that his sister, this book is pretty racist towards indigenous Native Americans. He says that his sister died and he buried her in a particular place because he, quote, he didn't want her grave dug up by Indians. So, okay. He talks about how he has faith in God, and Angel's like, oh, my mama had believed in God and she was squashed by God like a bug. Just reinserting that Angel's mom felt squashed, but it's not Angel's mom. It's not God's fault that Angel's mom was squashed like a bug by life. It's not God's fault. It's Angel's mom's fault for not believing the correct version of Christianity because she was a Catholic. Oh, I forgot to mention, at the wedding, she didn't say yes to marrying him. She said, do you take this man? And she answered, why not? So the consent portion is definitely something. At this point, I'd like to point out that there really is no reason why he couldn't have made her a deal to get out of the brothel. I mean, she could have left. He could have snuck her out and they could have planned it. He could have given her some sort of agency. If she did in fact believe that Duchess owed her money, he could have said, how about I cut you a check and you can work it off? There was no agency given whatsoever to Angel. It was only, you are my wife. I want you to be my wife. God said you'll be my wife and now you have to listen to me. Stop running away from me, Angel. Or whatever name he calls her that day. Sometimes he calls her Amanda or Mandy. It's just the fact that agency was never given to this woman and the fact that this is like supposed to be a parallel between Christians and God, like how God treats us when we're so disgusting and dirty and despicable and sinning. It's like, so God doesn't really want us to have choice in the first place, does he? According to you. Because according to my notes here, Michael Hosea never gave her any. He says to her, by the way, my name is prophetic because Hosea the prophet married a prostitute too. She's like, wow, cool. And he says at one point that he should have dragged her out of the brothel no matter how much she kicked and screamed. Cool. But then he says to her, I'm never going to hurt you. Maybe physically, that's still up in the air, but emotionally, you never give her any agency either. But the funny part is that they're having this conversation while he is demanding that she follow him out into the woods in the night. Like, this would be a perfect opportunity to explain, like, hey, you do have choice in the matter. I do value your humanity. I do value that you are a person who can make your own choices, and you've lived a life up to this point where you have never been able to do that. Instead, he's like, you better follow me out into those dark woods or else, bitch, but I love you. Like, this is abuse. Okay. And again, I just want to point out that this is what women and girls in Fundyland are told to aspire to. This was given to us in youth groups. This was given to us in Bible studies. This is the love that we are supposed to think is not only God's love for us, but the kind of man we should choose for a husband, or I guess be chosen to be the wife of too. Whatever. Yeah, so he's like, go into the woods in the night with me or I'll make you. That is not a choice. Okay. And so he tells her at this point, it's got to be my way or not at all. And I'm like, again, that's not choice. That's not love. And all of this was to drag her out, take her on a walk to go to a certain cliff to see the sunrise. And he says, that's the life I want to give you, Angel. A life full of color. And I'm like, bro, you forced her outside in the middle of the night. You could have just asked, do you want to go see the sunrise with me? I just want to point out that there is a line in here that says, his mind painted pictures of them making love, like in Song of Solomon. So proof that Song of Solomon is in fact fucking smut. But then he says that a dark voice keeps telling him in his own mind to take advantage of her. And at this point I was like, Angel, run, girl, please run, SOS. And he's frustrated because she keeps trying to leave, and he prays saying, Jesus, what do I do? Chain her like a dog? Why would that even come to mind for you? Are you good? This man is an anti-slavery bro, and yet he just thought, Jesus, should I chain her up? Okay. When Jesus hung out with sex workers, I'm pretty sure that he never chained them up, but okay, sure, Michael. I just want to point out that outside of Michael being a scary person, this book doesn't really make any sense because Angel keeps saying, I'm gonna get out of his house and I'm gonna go back to paradise, I'm gonna go back to the brothel and I'm gonna get my money. How? Like, it was so lazily written. You couldn't explain, is she gonna sneak in? What is she gonna do? How is she gonna get her money? How is she gonna convince Duchess she literally had to leave because she was beaten to the edge of death by Duchess's bodyguard. So how, pray tell, will you be getting that money? But see, Francine Rivers didn't care about writing a plot that made sense with people who do things that make sense according to the parameters of the story. She only cared about writing Christianity. Okay. I just want to point out, Francine Rivers was in fact a romance author until one of her neighbor kids invited her to church one day, and then she became a Fundy. Then she wrote this book, and originally she wrote it in a non-Christian fashion, but then she eventually put the Christian stuff in there. I don't know what this book could have possibly looked like before the Christianese, or the Christian crap, but okay, your guess is as good as mine. Was it like 365 days, but make it a farmer? Because he's like, you have to fall in love with me, come work on my farm. But now it's 365 days, but make it a Christian farmer? Okay. Let's talk about the sex scene because I'm fucking horrified. Let's talk about the sex scene, which was the most horrifying sex scene I have ever read in my life because it was not a sex scene. It was marital rape. I'm very concerned and confused. I'm concerned about all of the Christian girls who learned about sex through this book, and I am confused as to why my resident book banner, Julie Gebhards, thinks that this is an appropriate book. And I did check, and this book in particular is in her daughter's high school, and it contains rape, including marital rape, child sexual assault, child sex slavery, general themes of sex work, which I'm sure she's against. But this book is allowed, but The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison is not. I would just love an answer as to why the double standard. But again, I think we know the answer. I just want to point out that double standards don't help any kids, including mine or Julie's own kids. All right, moving on. I am so disturbed by this sex scene. I will try to convey it to you to the best of my ability. I screen recorded it and sent it to a friend because I was so horrified and I wanted to know if anybody else would be as horrified as me. Yes, it's horrifying. I honestly suggest you don't read it. I have read a lot of smut. I've read a lot of disturbing things in my life. I have read extreme horror books. Nothing has made me as sick to my stomach, sex scene wise, as this. Ooh, Carlos is going to get tacos. What a great reprieve. Let me order some tacos and then we will address the marital rape not from my husband, certainly, because I didn't marry a fundy guy, much to the chagrin of my parents. They have sex and he tells her during, it has to be my way, not your way. And she says, why can't it just be the way it is? A lot of this is like alluding to things, but it's pretty clear that what he's saying is he wants her to have sex with him, but in a way where she is emotionally vulnerable with him. Now, this is not right or fair. It's disturbing. He goes so far as to repeatedly make her, and I'm using the word make her because that's what the words were that were used in the book, make her repeatedly say his name to him after she has said no. I can't describe this as anything other than rape. It was rape. I don't care that they're married. She did not want to be emotionally vulnerable with him. She said no, and he kept making her do things that she was uncomfortable in a sexual situation. It's rape. The fact that this is considered good material and the fact that book banners have no issue with this being in a high school situation, and it is in, I believe, 4 high schools in my county, including the ones the book banners kids go to. And I'm not advocating for getting it banned. Personally, I would tell my kid if they wanted to read this, okay, but we're gonna have to talk about that like really gruesome sex scene and how that's inappropriate. I'm saying that if we're going to ban The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, but we're not gonna have a conversation about this doing the literal exact same things that you wanted The Bluest Eye banned for, then you need to explain the double standard, and then you need to explain why double standards are an appropriate way for us to determine which books stay and which books go. Because it was rape. It was a 4-minute long scene, 4.5-5 minute long scene of rape. And it was disturbing. It was unsettling. I felt sick over it. And the reason that I felt sick over it was because the authorial intent was, this is good. When normally, certainly in a book like The Bluest Eye, it is not, sexual assault was not portrayed as a good thing. But this is good because it's righteous. It's a husband doing this to his wife, making her submit to him even in a sexual situation when she is a sexual assault victim. It's so horrifying. And the author saying this is good, this is righteous, is what unsettled me. Not the content itself, but the intention behind it made me sick to my stomach. So she runs away the next day. Bitch, I would too. And it says she had to get away if she was ever going to call her life her own. So it doesn't even address the fact that he raped her. It goes straight to, she's just being selfish. She just wants her own life. She's so stubborn, that angel, wanting her own life and autonomy and to make her own choices. And it says, I quote, he should have known. He'd seen the look in her eyes when he made her say his name. He'd gotten through her defenses for one brief instant and she hadn't liked it. I just want you to sit with that for a minute. Him raping her and emotionally traumatizing her in a sexual scenario, in his eyes, was a good thing because it had gotten through her defenses. That's supposed to be something that she shouldn't have, is defenses. I can see why Julie Gebhardt doesn't want this book to be banned because, again, she did say that consent is something she doesn't like. I'm misquoting, but essentially that's where we're at, right? And this book hates consent, absolutely hates it. So I can understand why she wants this available to kids, but not things that say, consent is a good thing. I can understand. Surely, that makes sense. So she runs away, he comes after her, and she says to him, "This is a free country. You don't own me no matter what you paid the Duchess." So he did pay the Duchess, which begs the question, why can't she and him just work out a deal where she works off her debt to him? Why can't he give her literally any autonomy? He says, "If you come back, we're picking up where we left off last night, and we're still playing by my rules." That sounds like a threat of rape to me, but okay. So she decides, he leaves her there about a mile from home and 29 miles from Paradise where she was going to walk. So she walks back a whole mile. Her feet are all, banged up. He washes her feet and she feels bad because when he came to get her, she slapped him. Ma'am, why are you writing a repeat rape victim, feeling sorry that she slapped a man who just raped her the night before? Francine, you are a vile person for that. She doesn't want to talk and be emotionally vulnerable, and he forces her. And he says, "When I made you say my name, you couldn't pretend nothing was happening between us, could you? I wanted to get inside you, inside your heart. Did I?" And she says, "A little." And he says, "Good. My brother in Christ, literally. You are a fucking menace." At one point he says, "A woman is either a wall or a door." And I'm like, or, hear me out, a woman is a human and you don't treat them as such. And then it says he had to fight back unmanly tears. Francine, I'm just going to go ahead and recommend The Will to Change by Bell Hooks. I have nothing else to say. Then he talks about his brother-in-law, Paul, his sister's husband, who has been off doing gold rush thing, just gold rush things. He says that Paul lost himself when Ellie, his sister, died. Ellie, by the way, was like 18 years old. So he says a man's life loses meaning when his woman dies. And I'm like, so he has to find a new woman to find meaning? Okay. So Paul shows back up and he recognizes her and he's like, "You're a cold, defiled goddess." Okay. And he thinks that she swindled Michael into marrying her, and so that becomes like part of the plot, which it's just silly and contrived. Unfortunately, it gets really gross. So she wants to go back to Paradise still because she's like, I can't be here. So Paul agrees to take her, and she says, "Now that I'm gone, you can have Michael." And it says, was she making some foul insinuation? Was she doubting his manhood? So we didn't need to write homophobia in here, but we did, didn't we? So he immediately stops and says, "You owe me something for the ride." Do you want to take a guess what he says she owes him? It says, her smile mocked him. Did he think she couldn't? And it says he was rough and quick with her, the sole desire to hurt and degrade her. Yeah, okay. So she gets back to Paradise, and the brothel, which is the palace, it burned down. Duchess left. Turns out McGowan, the guy who beat the shit out of her, burned the place down, and all of her friends are gone, except two of them were in the brothel when it burned, and they're dead. So assumedly they went to hell, and then all the men hanged McGowan for killing the sex workers. Great. So now she can't get her money. How she was planning to get her money, again, we have no idea. God, I really wish that this book had a sapphic version that was not rooted in Christianity and was actually about a deal and also not about demonizing sex work. Can somebody very specifically write that for me? So Murphy, the bartender, who was the bartender at the palace, is now working at a bar, and he offers her job back as a sex worker with room and board, and she gets a 60-40 split, and she's like, "No, I would like a 50-50 split," and he's like, "Okay, fine, but I get sexual favors whenever I want for free." And she's like, "Well, I just feel stuck, so what the fuck else am I gonna do?" And this, again, is part of the thing of how this woman is not given any choices. Not really, because where else is she going to go? She either can go back to the guy who raped her or stay with what she has been brought up in and knows better the devil you know, right? So she's working, and Michael shows up and says, "Get dressed now." It says he literally shoves her into the corridor without letting her get her shoes on. Great. We love a physical abuser. Murphy comes at him and it says he, again, shoves her roughly. Super cool. Super romantic. He fights them off. She's scared of him and tries to run away. Then he's like crying. It's like he's personally being harmed by this, but she has no agency and she's the one being shoved around. And they say to each other, your kind of love can't feel good. And the other says, does yours feel any better? It doesn't matter which one said which. All of this is incorrect. None of this is love. This is not choice. This is not giving somebody, like, it's not even treating a woman like a human being. That's not love. This is exactly why I no longer am in the faith. It didn't feel like a choice anymore. And then he says, I shit you not, I felt like killing you when I walked into that room. Jealousy is not love. I don't care that the Bible says that God is a jealous God. I don't care. Jealousy is not love. Jealousy is a you problem, not your partner's problem. And she says, Michael, being a sex worker is all I have ever been. And he says, that's horse manure. When are you going to stop wallowing in it? Okay. So she asks, did Paul tell you that we had sex? And he says, yes. Michael, it says, saw she took the whole blame on herself, but her and Paul would both have to deal with it. When are you going to deal with the fact that you raped your wife? Just questions I want answered. He says, why'd you leave? And she says, to get my gold. He asks, for what? And she said, I want a little cabin in the woods. And he says, you've already got one. Yeah, but you're in it. Why don't you leave? And she says, I want to be free just once in my whole life. He says, you are free, you just don't know it yet. It's not freedom if she didn't choose it for herself. It's quite the opposite. But that's the thing, is that Christians really like, no, I shouldn't say Christians, fundies really like to rewrite words, like what it is to be a real Christian or not, what freedom is, what love is, what sex is, what rape is. They change all of these definitions so that they can justify their beliefs around them. It says, was her pride the only thing that mattered? Bro, it is not pride. It's boundaries, dignity, autonomy. Like this entire book paints Angel as if what she's doing is about her pride and her being stubborn and her being wayward, when in fact she's just a woman trying to get literally any autonomy she can get at all. It's horrendous. This is horrendous. He's crying, and we have this scene where she beats herself up while he cries because she's horrible and he's the victim, which is the opposite. And so then she gets really upset, and it says she could feel the filth of her trade covering. Her whole body was foul inside and out. I want to remind you that this is a child sexual assault victim who was just recently raped by the guy who said that he loves her. And this is a rape victim saying that she feels bad for what she has done to her recent rapist and that her whole body was foul inside and out. Okay, so I can relate to the feeling of feeling disgusting and dirty because of sexual assault. I can relate to that, and I understand it. I'm really disturbed, though, by the way that this is set up, where she is feeling foul about what she did to Michael when Michael is the one that did it to her. And it says, what could become of a marriage so fouled by sexual betrayal? And I just want to point out that she did not want to marry him in the first place. And he's thinking to himself, saying, why should I expect her loyalty? She never promised it, and I made her say the vows. So I'm thinking, finally, a turning point for Michael. He realizes he never gave her a choice. No, nay, he is still the victim. He thinks that she left again because she went down to the stream, and he says, I'm sick of the struggle. Okay, stop struggling. She never asked you for help in the first place. So he finds her bathing in the stream, and she is scrubbing herself with rocks until her skin is raw. Let's ask why she feels this way about herself. Is it really because of a trade that she wanted to be a part of? Or is it maybe because she has never had any choice or autonomy, and on top of that, she has been shamed for the work that she was doing without being given any other choice? We're not going to think about how maybe that's really fucked her up. He's annoyed, and he says it doesn't work that way. And it says, half shoving her into the cabin, he slams the door. We love an uncompassionate dick. And he says, what are you trying to do? Make me feel bad you went back to prostitution? Just want to remind you that this is in high schools. Girls are reading this. He wanted to shake her. He wanted to kill her. Let her suffer. She deserved it. These are quotes from the book. Then she explains her upbringing. Her mom, who also became a sex worker. The dad who wanted her aborted. And it says, that she tells him Duke had a thing for little girls. It says she didn't tell him it was a matter of survival. What did it matter? She had chosen to obey. She's like, you're, the wrong man for me. And he says, I'm not the wrong man. He puts the ring back on her finger. Again, he does not ask her, do you want to put this back on? Because her body is not her own. It wasn't her own when she was a child, when she was working for Duchess, or now. She will never have any autonomy. And he says it says, you think that I'm going to stop loving you the way that your dad stopped loving your mom, because of course the only real love comes from knowing Christ. And so she finally admits to him that she was raped at 8 years old. He says, why should I take my pleasure when it costs you? And she says, it doesn't cost me. And he says, then why do I have to force you? So we're admitting then that it was rape. Cool. Great. And he says it costs you to say my name. And it says she couldn't answer that. That's because it's rape. Because Francine can't answer that because she knows something about that is wrong and it's rape. She says, you ask too much when he wants that kind of sex from her again. And he's like, well, I disagree. I'm sure you do disagree. But she is telling you the boundary. You're asking too much from me. I cannot give you this. And he says basically, oh, you feel nothing during sex with me. Well, my whole body comes alive, so I want yours to come alive too. And I kept pausing at this point to scream. He talks about Adam and Eve, and she doesn't know the story correctly. Again, she has been a childhood sexual assault victim and trafficking victim since 8 years old, so of course she doesn't really know good theology, but it says she had her theology wrong. Great. Okay. And he's like, Adam and Eve weren't cast out because of sex. It was because Eve wanted to be God. And here we are asserting what Francine has been trying to tell us the whole movie. The whole book. That women don't need to make choices. God, or Michael Hosea in this case, makes them for us. Cool. And then he says that he uses Song of Solomon to learn about how to have sex. I just want to point out again that, once again, that this is in high schools. Second, I just want to point out to you that I brought up to my school board when Julie Gebhardt's put in a request to have this book as gay removed. I went to my school board and said, if this violates the law, then so does Song of Solomon in the Bible. And there are plenty of Bibles in Hillsborough County Public Schools full of these sexual scenes that are talking about literally oral sex and all kinds of other ones in graphic detail. So if this book is gay violates the law, then so does Song of Solomon. And you know what? This other book that is in the schools right now, in the same school that Julie Gebhardt's daughter's in, this also violates. So again, what's with the double standards? It's so wacky. Okay, so he takes her to buy some clothes in Sacramento because she's been wearing his sister's clothes, remember? Her sister was a witch. I have to do it. He's never, at this point, by the way, asked her, is there anything you're interested in? What's your favorite color? He's just like, you like house stuff and clothes, right? You women like that stuff, right? That's it. You don't need any other personality. And also, let me tell you what to do, including during sex. And so he starts to talk to her about Bible shit. And it says, I shit you not, Bathsheba was an adulteress. Mary was pregnant with another man's baby. Wow, let's leave out entire context in order just to shit on women just like you're doing to your own fucking wife. Cool, Francine. What a great way to write about women. You're really a girl's girl. Fuck Francine for this. Bathsheba was not an adulteress. Bathsheba was probably a rape victim also. And of course, Mary was pregnant with another man's baby. God got her pregnant. What the Mary's in trouble for God asking her to carry his baby? What the fuck? We really just look for any opportunity to say, women, am I right? No, you are not right. Men did both those things, and men are doing the thing to Angel right now in this book. Francine, what the fuck is wrong with you? Do you just really fucking hate women? Is that why you wrote this book? They talk about worrying about Indians, and I just feel like, you know what? I understand that historically at that point there was contention, and by contention I mean colonization. But I think that we didn't actually need to throw this in at all. We could have just left the Native Americans out of it entirely instead of shitting on them and at every turn making them seem like inhuman people. What? Like inhuman beings. That was a pointed choice that Francine made. Honestly, fuck Francine. They went to the store for clothes, then they run into a family with a broken wagon wheel, I think, called the Altmans, and the Altmans come to stay with them for months. And the Altmans don't want to go on right now to Oregon like they planned. They're doing Oregon Trail. Oh, let me bring back this meme I made. The Altmans don't want to do the Oregon Trail because they are, quote, worrying about Indians. We actually didn't need to do any sort of racism against Native Americans. I understand that at the time there was certainly contention due to, colonization. We could have just left that out entirely and not shat on Native Americans every opportunity we gotten. But you know what? Fuck Francine. That's just who she is, I guess. And the Altmans are talking about babies. And she remembers Duke forcing her to have an abortion. So that was traumatizing. So she's snuggling the Altman's youngest daughter, named Ruth, of course, because every name in this book is going to end up being a biblical name. That's actually what Christians do, and I know because me and my siblings were all named after Bible people. I was named after Rachel of the Bible. My sister was named after Sarah, the same reason that Sarah, the Bible. And then my brother's name is also a Bible name. So great. So there's like a Miriam, and these are all Bible characters. And it's just great. Just that. Okay, we're going to move on. So she's snuggling their daughter, Ruth, their youngest daughter, Ruth, the Altmans. And it says that Michael says to her, maybe we'll have one like her someday. And she's like, oh, I can't have kids. Duke made it. So she's thinking to herself, well, Duke made it so that I can't have any more kids because I kept getting pregnant because, I was forced into sex trafficking. So anyway, oh yeah, there was a line in here that says, where do you think the church gets most of their music? Because he was singing a tune to a hymn, and she's like, oh, I know that tune. And he's like, well, you know the other version of it, but this is the Christian version. She's like, well, that's not the lyrics that I know. The lyrics I know are kind of like raunchy. And he's like, yeah, well, where do you think the church gets most of their music? Yeah, we know. Churches always steal from secular culture because they don't have any ability to make anything original on their own. That's still going on today. There was just a lady on TikTok getting shat on for it recently. I mean, rightfully so. And then the Altmans, the mom makes her new underwear. And by the way, they talk about how the daughter Miriam has a hope chest, which is like a chest full of like underwear that you'll wear, but only when you get married. So there's like, pantaloon underwears. So the Altman's mom, they make her new ones, and she's like, oh, you think I'm dirty and disgusting? Miriam, the daughter's like, you're an idiotic child for wanting to refuse a gift. And then she tells her about her special undies that are tucked away in her hope chest. And then Miriam, help me, says, Papa says I need a strong man who will keep a firm hand on me. And I want to point out to you that Miriam is the oldest daughter in the Altman family. She's 16 years old. Papa says I need a strong man who will keep a firm hand on me. They're actively trying to find her a husband to keep a firm hand on her. She's a 16-year-old. So I guess we can see why this book is allowed in book banners' daughters' high schools. I guess we can see why. Michael Hosea is praying, and he's like, oh, I know how to keep Angel with me. What she really needs is a child of her own, Lord. Or you could maybe ask her what she would like, but no, I guess not. And then it says he's jealous of her falling in love with the Altmans. Okay. He doesn't want her to have any relationships with anybody except him and maybe God, but mostly him. And she tells him, I don't want to fall in love. You'll just end up using it against me. And yeah, like no shit, because he literally just said that he doesn't even want her. He's jealous of her having a relationship with their neighbors, just as fucking friends. She finally tells him, and this is really horrifying, and this is another thing that I don't understand why this book is allowed in schools, but The Bluest Eye isn't. It says, I had sex with my own father. So Angel was brought up by Duke, and then she found out that he was friends with her father, Alex, who didn't recognize her, but Duke knew that that was her dad, introduced them just to see what she would do about it. And her dad tells her, you look familiar, and that she knew what she was doing and did it anyway. And she's telling Michael Hosea this, and he says in his inner monologue, God, is there a sin this woman hasn't committed? And it says, I can't have kids. I've had 2 abortions. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. And Michael is like, I forgive you. I promise to love and protect you. And she says to him, and what can I promise you? And he says, to obey. They bone, and there's orgasm euphemisms, which again, I don't understand why this is allowed if it has sexual content. Doesn't that violate you guys' favorite Florida laws and shit? And the next day she leaves because she feels bad, because she feels like, you know what, that 16-year-old, that would make a better wife for Michael, the 25-year-old man. And I feel bad because I've had 2 abortions and I can't have kids, I think. So she leaves. She goes to Sacramento. She meets this really nice guy who has a family, and he's like, oh, we'll get you set up. Well, Michael shows up and he's like, what are you doing? She's like, I ran away again. He's like, oh, bother. Brings her back home. And then she sees him talking to Miriam, the 16-year-old Altman girl. And she's like, no, I think they have feelings. I should go. So she leaves again, right? She goes, she gets a job in Sacramento. She gets a job being a maid and a cook, and it's fine. And then the place is burnt down by Duke. Then Duke takes her to work with him. He finds her and he's like, he's like, well, you're too old for me now because I'm a pedophile. So you're going to take care of these 2 little girls that I am sexually assaulting, and then you're going to go back to prostitution. And she gets up on a stage and she starts singing a hymn called Rock of Ages, and then some guy gets her and the 2 girls out of there, and he adopts the girls, and then Angel creates a home for former sex workers and helps to, this is not the word used, but this is the insinuation, rehabilitate them. Then Paul shows up because Miriam, who he married, Paul, the guy who forced Angel to have sex with him, who's the homophobe, the brother-in-law of Michael, Paul is like, fine, Miriam, my 16-year-old child wife, I will go see what Angel is up to. I will go find her because Michael is done coming after her. And so he goes and finds Angel, and he's like, Angel, you bitch, you left Michael. And she's like, oh, well, I'm not sex working. I'm taking care of former sex workers. I just thought that Michael and Miriam would be better off together. And he's like, I married Miriam. Michael's been waiting for you this whole time. It's been 3 years, dude. And she's like, oh, fuck. So she leaves the home for former sex workers to her pal, goes back to Michael's farm. It's been 3 years since they've seen each other. She kneels at his feet and says, I love you. Sorry for leaving. I won't do it anymore. I'll be your wife this time for real. By the way, my name is Sarah. The end. This is the most paternalistic, bullshit, stupid nonsense. And I really hate to fixate on this particular detail, but I don't understand why it is appropriate for this to be in a school when it has rape, incest, sexual assault of a child, pedophilia, sex trafficking of a child, prostitution, sex work, talking about sex in detail, the same shit out of Song of Solomon, like all of this is in there, and yet this is not a problem. This is not going to get challenged. But The Bluest Eye by Nobel Prize winning Toni Morrison, that version of all those things is not appropriate and we need to ban it. I don't understand. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. If I were to go read this at my school board, and I'm thinking about doing it just to make people uncomfortable with their double standards, people would be like, oh yeah, I do seem to be a hypocrite. But the problem is that I don't want to read this book's sex scene again in my life because it was so traumatizing. And this is available for girls. And and it's not like I don't want it to be available, but the people who are giving this to girls are not saying, let's open up a conversation. Let's have a conversation about, whether or not a man should treat you the way that the love interest is treating his wife in this book. And further, since this is an allegory for how God treats us, if this is an appropriate way for us to be treated by a religious entity, I honestly cannot believe that this is something I have to point out, like the hypocrisy here. This is the worst thing I've ever read. It is poorly written. There's so much head hopping. A lot of the shit doesn't make any sense. Like, how was Angel gonna get her money back? Like, you couldn't even write in a line about, like, maybe she'll steal it, she'll go in disguise, she'll bribe somebody and cut them half. Nothing? Seriously? You're a writer. You can't write plot? And again, I just really want somebody to write a sapphic version of this. Take out the sex work, make something magical in lieu of it. I don't know, because I just feel like we don't need to save sex workers all the time. Like, that's sex work is work, and we should empower people to do their work as long as they are doing it safely. I don't see a problem, just like any other job. I'm just really disappointed. Like, I'm really disappointed that everybody growing up in my life thought that this was so appropriate. And not just appropriate, but this was prescriptive. This is what they wanted us to have as a relationship. This is what they were hoping that we would aspire to. This is supposed to be aspiration. This is the kind of relationship we're supposed to model and do and be. A woman with no agency, no prospects. If you are considered, if you want to have any sort of like dignity and independence at all, you are considered wayward and stubborn, and you're not submitting to your husband. You're not obeying, as Michael said. I mean, this is like ultimate fundy relationship bullshit. I just cannot believe that people read this, especially that sex scene, and thought, yeah, this is what I want for my 16-year-old daughter, younger even. What? So I'm horrified. You can see why I am disgusted. And this was the worst thing I've ever read. It is worse than Caraval. It's worse than Lightlark. Why? Because it is prescriptive. It is saying these things are good things. And also, it even when it is writing plot, it forgets to do that because it's not supposed to be about the plot. It's supposed to be about Christian apologetics and teaching you how to be a good Christian wife. So even from a craft standpoint, it does head hopping and bad plot. It's terrible. Why? Oh, and it's racist. Why, on top of everything, did we have to be racist towards Native Americans? Did you really need to do that? Did you really need to do that just because it was the 1850s? I think you could have left that out. Like, don't even comment on the fact that that was colonization and it was racist. But in that period of time, it was terrible. Just leave it out entirely, because you already have shown that you don't care about that entire people group, which how very kind and loving of you and very Christ-like. Let's just leave it out entirely. Like that would make more sense. Anyway, that was the book. It was terrible. It was horrible. I hated it. I never want to read another Francine Rivers again. I assume that they're all like this, and I'm just not interested. So, fuck you, Francine Rivers. Fuck everybody who thought that this is appropriate to ascribe to prescribe to young girls as a way to be, as an aspirational way to be. Fuck everybody. Fuck this book. Okay, thanks for watching. Leave your comments and questions down below. Let me know if you were as traumatized by this as I am. Okay, see you next time. Bye. Before I go, I have to say thank you for being a friend to my Therapy Bills patrons. By the way, I got a new mic. Hopefully you can hear me. Well, I got a new mic because Carlos stole the other mic, so I got one of these little like ball ones. Okay, sorry. I'm getting off topic. Okay, thank you to my Therapy Bills patrons: Alexander, Allie Magpie, Amba Hextress, Cami, Chris, Claire, Des Roberts, DJ Rocktopus, Ellie, Emperor's New Blues, Aaron, Eric, Faror, Harley, Jack and Jill, Ian, John E, Kelly No K, Casey McKenzie, Kate W, Caitlin, Quinn, Lady Kittybug, Lex, Alice, Peggy Lou, Rain, Reese, Samar, Scarlett, Shiny, and SMK. Thank you all so much for being a friend. And last but not least, I have to say thank you for being a friend to my Potato Starch Marxist patrons, and those are AM Angel, Amanda, Angelica, Anita, Artie the Ninth, Ashley H, Ava, BB, Beck, Blythe, Bookish Brainrot, Bree, Brian, Caitlin, Cardinal Ginger, Carlin, Cassandra, Catherine, Kathy, Chris, CJ, Cole, Colleen, Corwin, Corey, Darren, Deborah, Dex, Diet Goth, Dorian, Dorothea, Ebby, Ember, Emily A, Emily L, Emma, Aaron, Ezra, Hannah C, Hannah T, Harvey Kuro, Haley, Ilianaka, India Inks, JM Tennant, Jay is on Olympus, JT, Jen Michelle, Jenny G, Justice Sue, Jillian, Jojo Bookish, Jess Pugsley, Kaylee, Kat, Katie, Katya, Kayala, Kendra, Kylie, Laughing Cat Dog, Laura, Library of Scars, Lisa B, LP, Luciri, Luna Moth, Lustful Octopus, Martin, Marcella, Marquita, Melara, MK Books, Molly, James, Natalie M, Never, Nicole G, Nicole R, Nyan Binary, Paige P, Penny Chilling, Foxglove, Pixel Stars, Pure Raytheon, Rachel B, Rat Sarah, Reba, Rebecca, Ren, Robin, Rosie, Rowan, Other Rowan, Secoria, Sadie, Samantha M, Sarah C, Sarah H, Sarah the Bear, Shamed, Shanae, Shannon, Shayna, Sheena K, Sean, Sophie, Stephanie, Talia, 3 Old Dogs, Tina, Toast, Trashcan Teddy, Tito Phoenix, Valentine, and Writer A. Thank you all so much for being a friend.